Any changes to the minutes as we call the meeting to order?
None from me.
Okay, Councilmember Bergan, you fine with that?
I am. Thank you.
We got item 2, consent items with our construction change order report.
Good afternoon, everybody. This month I have one change order to report, and this is on it's for 47,000. It represents 31% of our initial construction estimate, and there's a reason for this. This project is an emergency stormwater repair located at 32nd and Airport. So this is one of the instances where things went well for the city. There was a city employee doing locates on a different project, opened the manhole, looked in it, and said, "This doesn't look right." Then they reported to Stormwater, who then reported to P&E, and then we got to do the emergency repair. Now,
basically the whole bottom of the pipe was missing.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but it doesn't look right. It was the bottom was gone.
Bottom of the pipe. So basically what we had was the asphalt was what was bridging the road.
And we just didn't know from scoping until we got in there, basically.
Yeah.
Yes, we didn't even know there was a problem until this employee opened that manhole and looked in it. And then when we got there to do the repair, that's when we had the rains a few weeks ago. So we had to do some extra work to stabilize. So a lot of that cost, 40,000, was really just for extra rock, extra material to stabilize the road.
What was the material the pipe was made out of to deteriorate like that?
Oh, it was CMP, corrugated metal pipe, and it was a popular material many years ago, but probably wasn't the right material at that time. Honestly, we didn't know, but we have a program that actually goes throughout the city to look at all the CMPs. We've done the first round of rehabilitation on them, and then now we're re-inspecting some of those again, because it was good material at the time, but over time, I think it was probably not the right choice of materials.
I've seen that with cast iron. The bottom can just deteriorate. Soil is the channel.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And water supply update. Good news, hopefully, from John Murphy.
Good afternoon, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. Yeah, we are just sort of in the middle of summer now, but you might notice in the report, I added to the peak storage. I think it's on page 9 of 194 there. Looks like we peaked on July 10th at 142,200 acre feet, which was 91% of storage, which was pretty good considering last time we got that high was 2020. We were 90%, 19, we were 93%. So way better than we thought we were going to end up this year for sure. We are sitting right now at 90% around there. So holding our own. We're seeing the river flows in the river come way down, as you would expect this time of year, but we do keep getting the occasional rainstorm. And so last week, some rain, and we ended up coming into priority for a couple of our junior water rights, and we're able to store a little bit of water at Strontia under that. But we're back down to some senior calls now. So we're just sort of trudging along, as would be expected for this time of year. Although I would say demand overall is still maybe a little below what we would see in a normal summer.
So I guess makes sense with all the rain.
Rain, and we haven't seen the temperatures. We've had one week of
like
90s,
yeah,
but we haven't seen 100. So normally that would be driving demand this time all the way through August. So could keep what we have.
Any questions for John? Thank you, John.
You're very welcome.
Kat with a quarterly financial report.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. So so we can just go along through the quarterly report. And you all have it, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things just to keep an eye on. Starting with combined operating revenues, they're 6% lower than planned, and about 6.5% lower than the second quarter in 2022. And just a reminder that we implemented 4% increase for water, 5% for sewer, and 3.5% for stormwater for 2023. Combined development revenues are also 28% lower than planned, and about 33% lower than the second quarter in 2022. We did expect some slowdown in development, obviously, but we'll continue to monitor growth and evaluate market conditions, not just the revenue and spending plans dependent on whether development sort of goes down and continues to go down for the rest of the year, or there's just a sort of temporary turn down there. Any questions on revenues?
So revenue decrease is the result of a decrease in construction, basically, or
On the connection fees, yes.
fees, okay.
And then the rates, revenue presumably is lower because of the lower demand.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Usage.
Any further questions at this point? Okay, please proceed, Kat.
Thank you. Expenditures. Whoops. Sorry about that. Here we are. There we go. Total operating expenditures are 8% lower than planned. Just a couple of things that are adding to that. Personnel services expenditures are lower than planned by a little over 3 million, large part due to vacancy savings. Supplies and services are lower than planned by 8 million. The primary accounts are professional services, purchase water, storage, and utilities. And there are a couple of things to highlight. One of the things that I like is the purchase water storage has come in 2.1 million lower than planned due to the timing of payments and agreements, and then for utilities, 2 million lower than planned due to lower usage on the home stake for pumping electricity. And then no change from quarter one on purchase vehicle and equipment replacement. We're still struggling with supply chain shortages causing delays. And then I'll move to the chart.
Can I ask one quick question about the personal services?
Yes.
So how many FTEs does that vacancy savings represent? Like how many people are we down that we should have?
The last I saw it was, we've been hovering a little over 10%, I think, for most of the year. So that's like 40 plus positions.
Wow.
And how is that impacting like workloads for the folks that we do have?
So we are accruing additional overtime in some areas. Primarily treatment is accruing some overtime, and construction and repair, water line break, those groups, the field crews are accruing some overtime. I think the inspectors are accruing overtime. We're down like half of our engineering inspections team right now. So it is a heavy burden on those teams, probably primarily those three that are down staff. We've also then got vacancies pretty much across the utility in all the other areas, but in most of the other areas, we're just doing a combination of things. Some areas like Kat's area, when Fernando left and we're recruiting to replace him, we increased a contract. We have an outside contractor firm that supports our rates and fees. So we bumped that contract up to increase hours and brought them in to help. So combination of overtime, contracts that we're using in some areas, and then in some other areas, just the staff who are still there are carrying a little bit of additional workload. So it's not, we would like to be under 10% for sure, both in existing vacancies and annual turnover. And both of those numbers are up above 10%. The vacancy rate for the utility looks like it may be close to 13-14% this year, which is going to be difficult. Some of it is retirements, so we're having a lot of key retirements this year, but then just combination of everything. So it's a little stressful right now.
And is there anything that you all could do that you need authority to do, or is it just recruitment difficulties and retirements, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I think we have the authority we need. We have the positions we need. Just between job market, we're having a few employees who are literally just resigning and moving out of state. And we're getting some feedback that Colorado is just a really expensive place to be right now. And so they're choosing to go elsewhere. We've had some employees leave for family reasons, but I think we have the authorities we need. We are working to optimize some hiring processes, to streamline some processes. Generally speaking, I think it's safe to say we feel our pay is appropriate. It's competitive for utilities in the area. So that was not the case a few years ago, but that's been fixed. That's been addressed. So we're just trying to work on creating some stability and working on things where we've had a little bit of probably turnover because we are moving staff out to this facility. So we're kind of moving their cheese a little bit. So we're hoping when we get settled in here with some of the other improvements and everything we've got, we can get a little more stability, but I think we have everything we need.
Okay.
So where have you been
Question.
officing from currently?
Sorry.
Well, a combination. So this facility is primarily an operations facility. And most of those staff are coming from Central. So, but we also have a facility called Nome, which is up kind of north of the Fitzsimmons campus. It's kind of been a temporary facility for us for a long time. We're closing that facility. Actually, police are going to move into that facility.
Okay.
And we're moving that entire workforce here. So most of the operations at Central will be moving here. Nome, all of those operations are moving here. And then almost everybody who's at the AMC will be moving here as well.
Okay. Councilmember Bergan, did you have a
I
question?
do. Not just, you mentioned a lot of retirements, and I know you, a lot of our departments have had quite a few retirements. Can we contract those retirees for part-time work?
We've done that a little bit. Appropriately, we're in the Dan Mikesell operations facility, and Dan retired 2 years ago. We brought him back under contract for 9 months. Does that sound right? About 9 months. And used Dan to help us with some things.
Well, I guess I was just wondering, like, have we reached out to retirees?
We have to some degree, and we are using some of them under contract, and we're bringing them back. I can think of probably 5 or 6 contract situations we've got right now. Not all of those have been retirements. We've actually contracted with some employees who've left for other reasons and brought them back as well.
Okay.
So yeah, we're very open to that. pretty much all the staff who leave are aware that we're happy to do that. We communicate, we encourage some of them a little more than others, but yeah,
Sure.
we're doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Kat, please proceed.
Okay, just wanted to highlight this chart on here. It just has a nice summary of the combined revenues and expenditures for water, sewer, and stormwater at the end of the quarter. You can see where it says YTD plan, it's where we should be according to our plan, and where we are in 2023, and then just showing where we were in 2022 around the same time. And so I just like that chart because it's really good at explaining where we are. So any questions on this before I move forward?
Questions? Anyone? Please proceed.
Okay, cash balances. A number of things here that are interesting to highlight. Total cash in the water fund decreased by 45.7 million compared to the second quarter of 2022. That's mostly just to capital spending and seasonal cash inflows. Is not necessarily anything to be concerned. It's just a matter of when we use the cash. And in the wastewater fund, there is an increase there of 33.7 million compared to 2022, and that is just due to the timing of when the debt proceeds were deposited into the account. But if you can see in the bottom of the chart here, we have appropriately funded all of our reserves and commitment types that are required per our policies, and we have cash reserves in both the water fund and the wastewater fund. So any questions on this chart?
Are we seeing this building in there somewhere? Where is that?
This building is almost out of our budget at this point. So it had been programmed in capital previously, and it's been, I think we've spent pretty much all the money. We're wrapping things up. We do have the moving contractor hasn't really gotten underway yet, but we awarded you guys
Saw that, yeah.
contract a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. So that's the last big contract foreseen, I think.
Yes.
And what was the total cost of the place here?
40,
47.
yeah, like somewhere in the 140 plus.
Yeah, so as we show you the facility today, that's a lot. The timing of when we did see worked out really well for us. The contractor was very proactive and cooperative. I think we had kicked around a number of what we thought this would cost had we tried to build it in today's market.
With the increase in costs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I don't, but I can go figure out what that number is. But
As I recall, it was like 250 or
20 or 30% higher. But there were a lot of things, and it was interesting because the contractor Saunders that we used, like Marshall mentioned, there were a bunch of things that were happening with material supplies at the beginning and towards like when the structure part of it was being put up. And they did a lot of proactive things like pre-bought steel prior to fabrication in order to lock in prices. And they did a bunch of that kind of stuff that really was helpful. Considering when it was constructed, the fact that it came in, what the projected budget was really impressive. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Any questions, Councilmember Bergan or Coombs? No. Please proceed, Kat.
Thank you. We have an update on the water connections, and I'm going to go just straight to the chart because I think it's the easiest way to look at it. And so as you can see, our water connections are down, which is just in line with our development revenue. And so same thing. We'll just continue to keep an eye on these and make sure that we adjust our revenue expectations as well as our expenditures based on how this number changes through the rest of the year. And then just the information, all the charts that I'm going to show you are through the end of June. So if you want a time frame, that's what we're looking at.
Quick question on the water connection fee.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, you know, you mentioned because development has slowed down, and I know it's always that balancing game, you know, act of making sure that we conserve water, but that we also have revenue that comes from people basically from using the water. Do we, I mean, I guess we're looking at down the road, if development doesn't pick up, effect on our budget.
Yeah, so
Because I just want to say, I was at a recent meeting and constituents keep asking, why do you keep adding housing when you're, you know, raising rates and we need to conserve water? And it's, I try to answer it as best as I can, but it comes up all the time.
yeah, and it's a little bit complicated, I guess, as most things in water seem to be, but and we shared with you the proposed rate increases. The rates are used to operate the system, and conservation does a couple of things for us. It creates additional resiliency and sustainability with our existing supplies for existing customers. It also provides an opportunity to help meet the needs of additional growth. So a lot of our projects associated with water supply resiliency, we split between rate revenue and fee revenue. So we burden primarily our connection fees with that, but there is a little bit of support from the ratepayer to build that resiliency. The conservation, again, is probably most important for future growth, because it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to acquire and develop enough water supply to develop the rest of the city, plus annexations and maybe extraterritorial service agreements, if they were to grow similar to what they looked like 30 years ago, when we required and code required this, a lot of Kentucky bluegrass, a lot of high water use. So the most important reason for the changes in the water conservation space is to be able to create a sustainable future community. As we go into the existing community and make it more sustainable, it will free up some water supplies to be able to help meet the needs of new growth. But we are paying for that, and you'll get the first heads up on this, where our conservation programs are extremely successful right now. So we're going to have to come in a supplemental for some additional spending authority. But that money that we're going to be requesting would be coming out of fee revenue. So because the savings will be used to support future growth. So it's kind of a balance. It's hard for people to follow all that and understand it. It's somewhat disconnected, but in some ways also connected. Did any of that make sense?
It did. And then also, I'm trying to explain to them that our water usage, even though our population has grown quite substantially, that, and I think I maybe said this correctly, but that in comparison to the growth, we actually have reduced the water supply need.
Absolutely. For a number of years, our water use stayed flat, even though we were continuing to add new customers and connections to the system. It's gone up a little bit now, especially when we've added things like Niagara, but it's still, the growth is significantly steeper, that curve, than the increased water use curve. So we're having a lot of success. We're doing a lot. You guys have supported some fantastic things that are creating future sustainability for the community and water savings. But we're very aggressive in the conservation space. We're also extremely aggressive right now in the water supply acquisition and development phase, because we need both of those to be able to meet future demands.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned the acquisition part of it. We're very aggressive in that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, one other thing related, you didn't ask this question, but if I could, if development slows down, we will have projects we're still spending money on associated with growth, at least while we're wrapping things up and adjusting our portfolio. So essentially what happens is the ratepayer bond ratings, et cetera, allow us to issue debt, and we carry that debt burden through no growth or no development periods. But in the connection fees, we actually include appropriate interest rates to the ratepayers to carry that burden, the debt burden, for future growth. So that's another thing we do to ensure that growth pays for itself and to protect the ratepayers.
Further questions at this point? Please continue, Kat.
Thank you. And then the rest are just a couple of charts that I wanted to go over. What's this here? This one is just showing 2022 to 2023 revenue, expenses, and cash flow. And if you go to the bottom of this chart, which you can see our revenue has gone down a little, but it's to the end of June. So the next time we talk about the third quarter, we'll see how that changed. Available cash, same thing. We don't have any debt proceeds to the water fund this year. And so you can see that sort of we look at it and then we spend it through the year. And then our capital expenditures also a little bit lower that first quarter. So I'll go over the chart here that shows a couple different things as well. Hopefully this one's easy to see. Just comparing water sales from 2019 to 2023. And then at the bottom here, the different years. We are here in this purple one with the little round circle, and shows where we are compared to previous years. And then there is this one, which I really like. Usage from 2023 versus historical. And so this one's a little harder to see just because of the way it's made. But our maximum is right here, the gray. Our average is right here on usage. And as you can see, we are right here at the bottom for 2023, which coincides with all the rain we've had and all the water. So we'll see how the rest of the year goes. Any questions on any of those charts?
Questions, anyone? Continue, Kat.
Okay, and then here's expenditure, revenue and expenses. And then just this peak, we're typically hovering around here. This peak is just the sewer debt proceeds and when they're released. And then it's just showing, obviously when we released it and then it went back to normal. And then our available cash based on that. And this is combined, for wastewater. And so obviously our cash is over here in the high because of the debt proceeds. And so over here is a nice summary of where we are in our capital plan. Our working budget includes sort of everything. It's carry forward, lapse appropriations, if we had any supplementals, etc. And so our total working budget is down here. Let me actually here. Our spending plan for 23 is this is where we should be. Here's where our actual spend. So you can see that we're sort of trending higher in a couple of places. And our encumbrances over here. This is what we've encumbered so far out of our working budget. So any questions on this?
Questions at this point, anyone? Okay, please go on, Kat.
And then just where we are in capital project spending. Here's a nice summary where we are sort of on the water fund through the second quarter. This so we're a little bit higher than we planned, and the North Campus Battlefield expansion project was 1.6 million more than planned, primarily due to the cost of equipment. Griswold solids handling system improvements also were 7 million more than planned. And that was just early. It was basically just what you're looking at timing. And so that was the spending was higher just because of earlier than anticipated completion of basins 1 and 2. And then the Rampart delivery system project. There are some savings there, budgetary savings, just because there's that delays in the land acquisition. And the design is scheduled to begin in around this time. So any questions on the water fund?
Any questions? Okay. Please continue, Kat.
Thank you. For wastewater, we're looking at spending $4 million less, and the collection program. And Sarah, I'm going to look here. Is it Sand Creek 2 and Sand Creek 5? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. What was that, Kat?
For the wastewater fund, I just wanted to make sure that the SC2 and the SC5 is Sand Creek 2 and Sand Creek 5.
Right, it's Sand Creek.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So let me scroll up here. There are some delays there, and so the spending was later. And the other thing I wanted to bring up here was the first interceptor segments were 2.4 million less than due to work for bid package 2 being delayed due to the rainfall. And total for encumbered projects for wastewater are 68.2 million. So just it's a summary. Any questions on the wastewater fund?
Questions, anyone? Please continue.
I think I'm almost done. So I have a nice chart over here of where we are. Let me scroll down. You've seen these ones. There should be a chart here on capital. So here is a comparison to 2023 on water, sewer, and stormwater. Where we are right now compared to 2022, you can see there is or less than in 2022, and then comparison here to sewer, and then sewer we're higher. So we'll continue to keep an eye on these funds and let you know. And here's the third one, just showing how stormwater is looking in comparison to 2022. So we're also higher in 2023. And I think that's the last of the charts. So any questions?
Thanks, Kat. The good news is that the expenditures are down so much, we don't need a rate increase for a while, right? So overly simplified, maybe?
I did not say that.
Okay. Questions, anyone? No? Okay. Thanks, Kat. Appreciate it.
Let me stop sharing.
So yeah, on to James for major drainage way planning for East Tollgate Creek tributaries, IGA.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for having me. I want to take a quick moment to introduce myself. My name is James Dietler, and I am the new planning services manager for Aurora Water. Although new to this role, been with the department for coming up on 10 years, so I decided to take a little bit of a leadership role with our modeling, asset management, and long-range planning teams. So thank you for having me. Today, we have 3 items on the agenda related to our relationship with Mile High Flood District. And for that, I brought along one of my staff members, Sam Sforza, who is going to have a brief presentation of each of these items, and of course, will be available to answer any questions.
In the flesh.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I'm excited to have the opportunity to speak to you again, Water Policy Committee. As always, I include this slide for posterity, just to know when we have an IGA required with Mile High Flood District. Happy to stop and ask any questions at any time, but I believe this group is pretty comfortable with this process. Today I have 3 IGAs, 1 master planning, 2 capital projects. So we will start with the master plan. Our goal as a department is to have updated hydrology to know possible flood conditions, possible pinch points about every 10 years. And for this particular drainage way, specifically the tributaries draining to East Tollgate Creek, it is coming up on time. So this is a almost entirely developed basin. In those 10 years, we've seen some additional redevelopment, new development, and it seems like a good time to restudy. So we will receive from Mile High Flood District's efforts updated hydraulic modeling, any relevant field work that's required, and identification of projects that would need to alleviate flood or provide water quality risk. On the next slide, we'll talk about the payment breakdown. And so for these drainage waste studies, Mile High Flood District covers half the cost, and the other half split between any municipalities that have drainage area within the basin. And so we have a predominant amount of the area, as you saw on the previous slide. We are covering $90,000 of that project cost. SEMSWA, the Southeast Metro Stormwater Authority, is covering 10, and Mile High has 100,000. So that brings our total to 200,000. And yes, on the next slide comes the question: do you support moving this IGA forward to study session?
Questions, anyone? Concerns? Can we move it forward? Let's move forward.
Great news, thank you. Departing from the schedule a little bit, we're gonna switch it up and talk about the Unnamed Creek project upstream of South Jericho Way. This project is a little unique as it started as a maintenance funded problem to address, and now we've identified enough that would merit it being a capital project that we cost participate with Mile High Flood District for. So we see a significant overtopping at South Jericho Way. And this is one of the only areas that provides water quality for way too big of a watershed. So this pond is not sized correctly for that now either. Maintenance cannot access the upstream forebays. They have no safe way to do so. And so all those 3 things combined mean that it's probably more of a capital project than just a quick sediment removal or cleaning, as we thought it was when we started out. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the cost breakdown between Aurora Water and Mile High Flood District. Right now, we are asked to designate 700,000 to this effort, while Mile High has 400,000. We have a projected final cost at about 3.4. And in the coming years, when Mile High is able to dedicate more funds to this directly, they will increase their funding to be about a 50-50 match between us both. So expect to see an amendment for this one too. And this being a new IGA, does the Water Policy Committee support moving this to study session as well?
Just a question on that last slide. They're short of funding, where they can't contribute more equitably to.
This is a situation, like I said, we're switching from the maintenance pot of money that Mile High Flood District holds per county, and then we're shifting into the capital. And so for their budget specifically, this is how they're handling that movement of their own funds into a new slot and next year appropriating the funds
They'll
within the
make
capital.
up for it later.
Correct.
Okay. Any que-
They've already appropriated their funds but via their board earlier in the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, anyone?
I don't know, maybe for your benefit and others, Mile High Flood District, how do they, I mean, I was on the board, but how do they get their revenues?
They're through mill levy. They have a dedicated mill throughout the entire district. And then the way that they allocate funds is by county. So the mills that are collected by county, then they split those up between the jurisdictions that are in those individual counties. And I'm not entirely sure the details in terms of how they divide that into capital programs versus the maintenance costs. I can find out more details on that, but that's generally how it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And we can move this forward. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Anything else?
Lastly,
Oh,
one more.
okay.
Our last capital project IGA, this one is an amendment to one that this committee and this council has seen before. The Cherry Creek Stream Restoration at Arapahoe Road. So right immediately upstream of the reservoir. So we last studied this area in 2004. This too has been over 10 years in developing some new project identification and pain point identification. So we knew that this was the last area to be updated. We had performed a lot of those projects that were identified within the 2004 plan. But this spot continues to be a little bit of a problem area. So this project with Mile High Flood District was to focus our efforts on the one unimproved area that we knew was seeing some pretty significant degradation, a lot of sediment transfer, some spread of the flood waters in that area. Focus our efforts on studying that, identify a capital project and move forward with what needs to be done. So at this time, we are still in the studying phase. We're bringing on a consultant to identify what needs are going to be dispersed throughout this reach, shared between the Cherry Creek Water Quality Basin Authority, City of Aurora, and SEMSWA again. And then we'll have a better idea from there of what actually needs to be addressed.
Does this include the area? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Does this include the area just south of the reservoir where the road has been washed out in a couple of places?
This is more upstream than that. Yeah, so that area specifically is entirely within Cherry Creek Water Quality Basins Authority. That's such a mouthful. Their jurisdiction, and we have our easement through there. And so this project is not addressing just theirs. They have a separate one to look at that.
There's a lot of conversations going on around that too, with the Basin Authority and with Mile High. As a matter of fact, they have a meeting coming up to talk about what they're planning on doing there. Not only to protect the Rampart pipeline, but there's a lot of concern about the amount of sediment that's getting into the reservoir that's getting washed through there. It's the challenge is going to be, it's just, I don't know if you've seen, and we can bring pictures to show what the floodplain looks like in there. It's a pretty hard thing to control. So, and then in talking also with the state, what their plans are to ideally permanently fix that road. There's going to be an interim fix for that their insurance is going to pay for, but they're also looking at an ultimate solution.
I see.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, so along those lines, but with all the flooding that we've seen at the reservoir in that area, has that impacted this area at all? Like, was there also flooding here?
We've seen some of it, yes. This is right around the soccer fields, just to kind of put that in perspective, immediately south of Arapahoe Road. So we've seen some minor things. No structures have been impacted, thankfully, I'll say. But the sediment movements, the degradation of the stream, we have seen an uptick in that with the recent storms. So I think this is a good time to study it, watching it when it is pretty inundated frequently, but yeah, it is certainly not its healthiest.
The good news is, I don't know, have you been to the soccer fields down in that area? You know that there's a bridge that goes across to the southern ones, and they're still working on repairing that. That is their asset, but that's the structure that's there, that concrete drop structure. That is a good indication of what has been put in place that is effective. And that bridge was made to basically do what it did, like to break away if it needed to. But it's the areas downstream from there. There's another drop structure, if you know, when you kind of walk across that bridge, that also is doing its job. It's just the areas downstream.
I'm missing where the bridge fell off.
Yeah, well, and it was kind of interesting. It kind of just moved a little bit right before the giant tournament. So we heard about, and it's unfortunately, it is something that they installed in their asset. We couldn't do much to help them, but they're working on fixing that too. So.
A lot of storm drainage did work well around the city.
Yeah.
That's a success story in a lot of ways.
A lot of ways, yeah. So there's been a lot of work that's been done since the 80s to make sure that we can continue to function, and then we're just continuing to implement the things so that that happens for all the future growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Further questions? And is this something we agree to move forward? Are you still going?
The last slide
Oh,
is just
okay.
breaking down the monetary commitment. I'm happy to skip this.
Oh, no, please. Guess I just want to take a tour.
So lastly, between our four agencies, it gets a little bit complicated. And in addition, the last amendment that was put before this committee and this council saw a transfer from a different project with a very similar scope that had remaining funds that would be better put to use within a more comprehensive holistic project. So that's what that column is there too. Those have already been appropriated. So this new amendment to this IGA is really just that second column there, the new funds, which is 500,000 from us, which we had budgeted and will be our last contribution for a bit. Mile High, it has 300,000 there. Semswa has another 100,000, and the Basin Authority has 3.
And we're happy with that allocation for the most part.
As-
Negotiating.
As we are figuring out where the problems actually lie and where the solutions need to be implemented, this for design and having an initial amount of money seems fairly reasonable. And then as we determine where those projects need to be, we'll really become equitable in where the money is coming from.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Councilmember Bergan? No, thank you. I believe we'll move it forward.
Thank you so much.
And let's see, I think we're with James again. Or
These were the three.
oh, right there. Okay, fantastic.
4 or 5.
And now moving on to Kat for number 6.
You're on mute, Kat.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen again. Some second. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this.
Can you put it into slide mode so we can see the full slide?
Yes, I'm trying to do that.
If you're at your keyboard, just hit F5. That'll do it.
Okay. No, that didn't do it.
Okay. Then lower right-hand
Let me see.
corner
Hold on.
of the screen.
Top two,
Let's see.
where it has the screen with the arrow in it. Yep.
No,
Over
go
to
to
the right.
slideshow instead. Go to slideshow and just say start. No, where it says slideshow in the menu. Icon. No. Next
View,
animation.
view. So I'm trying to see.
Right.
But like some, then it's.
I'm not sure how to make that full.
All the way on the top row, like all the way up in the ribbon, in the orange.
Yep.
Even more up.
Yep,
Okay.
and all the way up. Yep, and all the way over to the left.
Left.
Okay.
It looks like a screen with an arrow in it.
Right
That's
there.
it, right there.
That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I learned. Yep, learned something today. Okay. So we're going to be talking about water and sewer rates and fees. We had a presentation, I believe, at the last water policy committee meeting regarding rates. So I'll just provide a refresher on rates, but really the bulk of this presentation is for water and sewer connection fees. So just a refresher here. Our water operates as an enterprise fund, and we establish our user fees and connection fees on a cost of service basis. And one of the things that is that we have as a policy is we examine our utility rates through the cost of service process routinely to avoid the rate shock that occurs when rates are evaluated less frequently. Now, I wasn't here before, but I'm sure you were early here or saw when there is double-digit rate fee increases, and that is what we're trying to avoid with examining our rates and fees annually. Here's just a screenshot of our policy. So where we are in 2023 rates, we're at the bottom of similar municipalities here. You can see Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Castle Rock, and Aurora was in the 4% for 2023. For 2024, we are proposing a 5% increase for water, a 7% increase on sewer, and increase on stormwater. And then we have the proposed rate increases for the following 4 years, although of course the rates are examined annually to make sure that they're appropriate. How do we compare? So Aurora is proposing 5%. You can see some other ones. Denver is proposing between 4.5 and 5, Longmont 5, Fort Collins and Greeley 4. And then Colorado Springs is not anticipating a fee increase, a rate increase in 2024, but they are planning on a 6% increase in 2025. So here's just a visual of where we are. And so here is just a residential monthly water bill, what it would look like. So of course we have the different tiers. And so you're in the 0 to 5,000, you won't see an increase in your bill except for the service fee of 5%, which would be 68 cents. And then just the different average. And so the average usage will see about $1.64 increase. And then the high usage will see about close to 27. For sewer, we are proposing a 7% sewer increase, and we're mirroring what because Metro Water recoveries are wastewater treatment agent. Denver is proposing an 8%, and Colorado Springs is not proposing anything in 24. But they will be proposing 5% in 2025, although they are not served by Metro Water Recovery, obviously. Then this is where we are. So here is just an example of where we are. Sorry about that. For stormwater, obviously there is no change for stormwater, and then here is the impact on the different meter sizes for sewer. This is definitely a proportional one, so you'll see the smallest will be just 33 cents. So before I go on to fees, any questions on this rate refresh?
Any questions?
I have a question on the, if you can go back to the residential one, where it shows, yeah, that one. Okay, so when we say the difference will be, let's say on an average summer usage, $5.13. Because you have existing bill, proposed bill, but that's not a tier 3, right?
That
That accounts for the tiers. So the 13,000 would capture 5,000 gallons of tier 1 usage, and then another 8,000 or tier 2 goes from 5 to 10. So another 5,000 of tier 2 use, and then 3,000 in tier 3. So that's accounted for in that existing bill and the proposed bill. So
Because it seems low, that the difference, but so, yeah, you got your first tier, whatever, the normal rate.
Yep.
Then anything over goes to 2 and then over goes to 3 and accumulates that way.
It's like you want
So,
to.
but I mean, these seem low, like I'm not in a tier 4, I'm in a tier 3 typically. I'm not this year, but in past years. And I thought my bill was like almost 300.
But are you accounting for the storm and waste component
Yeah,
as
so-
well? Because this is water
Oh,
only.
yeah, this is water only, so the storm and sewer are going to be on top of this.
Okay, that's what, yeah, I'm missing that part. Okay, thanks.
Further questions? Please continue, Kat.
Okay, so fees. So we're gonna start with sewer fees. Aura's Water Engineering and Plan Division last completed a master plan in 2017. So they've been working to complete a new wastewater master plan, which will be finalized in 2024. And so the work that we did was we updated the sanitary sewer connection fees and the sewer interceptor development fees based on the updated 2024 master plan and sewer collection projects. And then we used the fixed assets value as of December of 2022, and then looked at all our projects that we have with the CAP for the period of 2023 to 2040. And that's just sort of the background of how we got to these numbers. And so based on that information, we came up with a 60% increase in the water and the sewer connection fees. And so what we are proposing is to do a 20% phase sewer connection fee increases until 2026. We understand that this is obviously a very impactful increase. And we believe that these increases will allow the development community to prepare for the increases, while also allowing Aurora Water to adjust our projections as we move forward with this updated sewer wastewater master. So based on that, the other part of that obviously is there's a number of cost drivers that drove the increase. Reinforcing steel and structural concrete prices have increased. We continue to struggle with supply chain issues, inflation, and just between 2023 to 2024, we're projecting, capital costs have increased 24%. So the sewer connection fee increase 6%, and so it's made out of the sewer connection fee and the interceptor development fee. And so these are the totals we came up with for the different meter sizes. Now how we phase that was as follows, and so you can see here. For 2024, we're going to do a 20%, 2025, 20%, and then 2026 fee increase. And we're going to continue to evaluate this every year just to make sure that our projections are still aligned with what we expect. And so based on that, for 2024, a 20% increase will look like this. So you can see is little under 1,000 single family residential detached. Any questions on the sewer connection fee?
Questions so far, anyone? Okay, please continue.
Okay. Water fees. So we also did a study of the water connection fee and our study. So there's a number of changes that we did. A lot of what's driving there was on average, a 24% increase for 2024 on the water connection fees. There's a number of components in there, obviously, and one of them is water acquisition costs. And then also one of the different things that we hadn't done in the past is we included in this new calculation land acquisition costs that we pay for engineering costs as well as legal fees. So we thought that was appropriate to include because that is costs that we already accruing as we pursue more water. And so our proposed fee for water for 2024 looks follows. And so on top here, you can see the single family residential for the different bathrooms. And then we also have, of course, a pre-ordinance outdoor fee and then post-ordinance outdoor fee, which is way lower. And then we have in the middle there, the multifamily residential, and then commercial and irrigation.
Pardon me, just a moment. I guess Councilmember Bergan is indicating there's some feedback. Do we have any microphones on in the room or additionally that might be picking up?
Just ours.
Just ours or so?
Everybody else.
Okay. Sorry about that, Councilmember Bergan.
See if I can do something.
Make an adjustment.
Maybe I'm the only one on WebEx.
Okay. I've turned down the input volume on this microphone. Hopefully that'll help.
Let's see if that
If
helps.
it's not a normal system, then we'll use that same and select together.
Please proceed, Kat.
So any questions on water connection fees?
Questions, anyone? No.
Okay. So we did a couple of scenarios to just show how the increase in the sewer connection fees and the water connection fees would impact. And so this is just sort of we used single family residential homes on the assumption that it's 7,000 square footage. And then for the multifamily scenario, the assumption is 25,000 square footage of impervious area. And then the calculations, again, only include water and sewer connections. So those 3 scenarios. Hopefully they are helpful. And so here is a single family detached with 2 bathrooms with a 7,000 square foot lot. And these are the updated fees. And so, and then we're assuming that they're using a water conserving outdoor. And so we have that lower rate here per square footage. And here are all of our updated fees. And so the total connection fee would be around 27,834 on this first scenario. Any questions on this one?
This is the proposed. I'm sorry. What was what's the current total connection?
This is all up for 2024.
Oh, okay, right there. Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Kind of both of them with scenario 1 and 2, but the 7,000 square foot lot, is that what we're seeing basically come in from our development plans, or the smaller lots? I mean,
no,
we ended up using 10,000, right?
Oh, sorry.
We're seeing there's some variability. A lot of the products that are coming in right now have smaller lots than 7,000. There are some with more. 7,000 is kind of the reason we're using 7,000 is it's the number that essentially the Denver metro area has settled on as an average lot size. So
Well,
those are
but Denver is very urban and dense.
right. Denver is urban and dense, but and we've got a comparison slide a little later that'll show how we compare against others. And so the reason we're using 7,000 is that's kind of what everybody has standardized on. Our average lot size, we think, is probably a little less than that right now. But it's a good way to compare against other entities and what their fees would be. If you look at a 5,000 square foot lot, which we've got some of those products coming in, it's going to knock a few thousand off of this connection fee.
Okay, so my question though, because of the increase obviously in the proposed rates, is we keep talking about affordability of housing.
Yep.
No, we're gonna hear from the development community that this is gonna raise the cost of housing.
And it is. They'll build this into the cost of housing. If we can, let's get through the scenarios and let's look at the comparison slide because it's pretty
No, I've
telling.
seen it. I read my
Okay.
backup. But
Okay.
go ahead.
So the only entity that's lower than us is Denver. And Denver is always going to be lower than anybody else because of a number of things. They built their system on water rights from a long time ago. They are not actively acquiring or developing water rights. They are tipping their toe into that market. If they get into that market, it will cause their fee to go up. But they've also got, in addition to the really old water rights and existing system, they are primarily landlocked, so they are mostly redeveloping or there is some infill development. So when you redevelop, most typically, like for example, if you take out a big park and build even multi-story development, your water use goes down. So they're not seeing the same type of development that is driving water use demands higher. Their development, in a lot of cases, is creating water savings, which means they don't have to acquire and develop new supplies. So our connection fees in the water space are more than 65% tied to water supply acquisition and development costs. And they don't have to build any of those costs in. So that's why they are lower and they will always be lower. All the other systems out there are still in the water supply acquisition and development business, which is why all the other connection fees are higher.
Hey,
Can I
and
ask a question? Oh, sorry.
just sorry, follow up.
Go ahead.
So when they say, so I know from the other chart, it's only Denver's lower than us considerably, and you just explained why. But so when they're saying your connection fees are higher than other municipalities, then that's not correct, obviously.
Well, and let me caveat that a little bit. So it's not correct in the single family residential space, which is what most of our development is. We are also cheaper than anybody else for low water use commercial, and we're very competitive in the multifamily, and lower than probably most of our neighbors there too. But high water use development, for example, some bottling facilities that just announced they're going to develop in Denver, were talking to us about developing here, and our connection fee is hundreds of percent higher for those types of uses than any of our neighbors.
Good.
So low water use development, including pretty much all single family, I should be careful there. If you get into really large properties with large houses, our tap fee starts to become more expensive than our neighbors as well. But there's very few of those by percentage that are occurring in Aurora. So single family, low water use or efficient water use, our connection fees are low and or very competitive. High water use fees, we are higher than all of our neighbors.
Good, because we don't want people to use a lot of water. But so my question is, you said that Denver is developing in such a way that they get water savings. How do we do that? Besides already having the water that we would need, which we can't do that part, but as far as the development, what does development look like from a physical standpoint that would give us water savings instead of increased water use?
Yeah, so the urban redevelopment space is really where that's. So when they're going into more spaced out developments that have a lot of outdoor irrigation, when they're redeveloping those, they're shifting a lot of that outdoor irrigation into more efficient areas, less landscaping, more water-wise landscaping, and going multi-story. And so it's that trade-off often results in water savings. So for us, if we don't have hardly any, we might have a little bit, but we don't have very much redevelopment going on. So we don't have the same opportunities here that they do. Now, we do have some neighborhoods that if they get into the redevelopment business, will create water savings for us as well. But Aurora's a fairly young, generally community, so we don't have the opportunities that they do.
Okay.
Further questions then please continue, Kat.
Thank you. And here we have a scenario for a single family detached with 3 to 4 bathrooms. And the last scenario, it's a multifamily building with 20 units. Any questions on the scenarios before I move forward?
Further questions? No? Please.
I
Go ahead.
I do have one question with respect to the multifamily, because you said we're not as competitive. As we're looking at fees, is there anything we can do to be more competitive in the multifamily space?
And we can put together some multifamily examples. We're competitive there. Multifamily, you have an indoor meter now and an irrigation meter. So after our water conservation ordinance that we just implemented, we haven't pulled comparisons together to see how that affects those types of developments. I would guess we will now be cheaper than, will be the same scenario. We'll be cheaper than everybody except for Denver. But we can put that on our list and pull those comparisons just to verify. So I think we're in a good place. We just haven't put all the data together.
Okay.
So we'll do that.
Please continue, Kat.
Thank you. And
that's-
so this is a chart that just shows different cities, and this includes only water and sewer connection fees and where we fall compared to other cities.
And one thing, a couple of things to note on there. So this is our 3 to 4 bedroom product here. So in neighboring communities, if they go to a smaller housing product, a more affordable product, their fee stays the same. Our fee goes down. So we become even more competitive in the affordable housing market as the products become smaller or more efficient water use wise. The other thing to note on here, and it's kind of bolded, but this is our 2024 fee. Many of these neighbors are also looking at fee increases. So we're lower than everybody except Denver, even comparing our increased fee to their existing fee. Our existing fee is even lower than that. Now, that fee is does include a 20-some% increase from last year. So that is what we're proposing as a sizable increase in the connection fee space. The sewer, we're also proposing a 20% for 3 years in a row to get caught up there. But it's like $1,000. I mean, that actually, I think it's less than $1,000 per year. This one, because it's a bigger fee, the percentage is a bigger dollar amount too. So this is probably what will generate the most excitement from developers, builders. We met with the HBA this week, Monday, I think, and gave them a heads up that increases are coming. Didn't share the numbers. They just said we like small incremental increases, and we said, well, we're doing incremental. Small might be a little relative because all the prices are going up. So, and again, about 65% of the water part of that fee is water acquisition and development. So.
Questions so far? Okay, please continue, Kat.
Thank you. That's the end of it. So any additional questions?
Well, in a perfect world, we'd only have our 2023 increases and can ride it out for a while, which would be the hopes of residents and certain council members, especially those who are not running or who are running for re-election. I'm just going to say, yeah, it's tricky, right? It's the perception. And so thoughts, council members that are here to on
Good
this?
point. Councilmember Sundberg, these should be done in even years.
Nobody wants to say that, but I'm not running for re-election.
So one thing we have talked about this year that might be helpful, we typically take these rate and fee increases along with the budget, right? So we pair it with the budget and it shows up right as you're in the midst of campaigning and trying to go through that whole process. We don't have to do that. We don't ever make these effective until next January anyway. So we can split them out of that process and they could come a little later.
I don't care about that.
Okay. We've had a couple of suggestions to maybe think about doing that.
Okay.
So that is, we'll still talk.
I mean, I don't think it's very honest to be like, we'll just
Well,
wait till after the election
We
to
would
have
go
that conversation.
to, right now, the schedule is that we go to study session still in the September timeframe. So we explain all of this in the September timeframe. We go to the development community. We get all the information out there. But we would bring this probably in November is when we actually need to bring it. Okay. To have it done in January.
I see.
So we won't be holding back information. It would still be communicated.
Okay.
Councilmember Bergan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. You know, it is what it is. I think the main point is that we can justify, you know, why rates have to be, have to go up. And I do appreciate, and I guess you're going to still have some more discussion with builders and developers. And I think that's, you know, important just to get that perspective and how it affects, you know, housing and cost and so forth. So I think as long as we have the stakeholders involved and make sure that we, you know, listen to them, and like I said, and have a solid reason why this has to happen. I'm what it is.
Yes, good points. The wording we're seeing, the presentation is an update, not a proposed price increase. So I think it might be important, perhaps when we present this in study session, to really first highlight the inevitable costs which have increased across the board, perhaps, whether it's energy. I noticed there was some savings on electricity, but I think 58% increase in natural gas.
Yeah.
Recently. I mean, wow, it's a lot.
Yeah, that was crazy. That's a little smaller portion of our bill, but electricity rates have also gone up on us significantly. Right. So the only reason we showed electricity savings in the first half of this year is because we haven't had to pump water up and over the Continental Divide. Oh, which happens most years, but Otero this year, the way the water came to us was very different. So we avoided a lot of pumping costs, and that pumping bill is like $280,000 a month. Wow. So we've avoided a lot of those costs of pumping water over, which resulted in savings, but the rate on electricity, and we had that, I think, in here. If not, we'll make sure we get it, has gone up 5%.
So perhaps highlighting those inevitable costs.
Okay.
And perhaps even highlighting the comparison that we are actually lower in a lot of, certain municipalities. That might even go in the water bill at a certain time. If they look at the savings that we are enjoying in Aurora compared to these other places. Just an idea.
One more.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It might be also good to, explain where we have tried to make, have savings and then efficiencies in the system. And also just, again, that misunderstanding about when we add more, more development, being able to kind of tie that into this presentation as far as, because it just.
That doesn't increase your rates.
Yeah, because people just assume you're annexing, you're developing more vacant land, and that they're paying for it is the perception.
Well, a question then for you. So really, the 5% rate increase in water this year is really only a 3% rate increase plus PFAS. So 2% of that 5, almost half of our rate increase is just dealing with PFAS. So should we message that electricity's gone up 5%, chemicals have gone up 30%? We've created efficiencies, maybe to your point, Francois, where we're only really asking for a 3% rate increase, but we got hit by an unfunded federal mandate to take PFAS out of the water, which is a good idea.
Or we could instead frame it as we are paying to keep your water free of PFAS.
Okay. And that's gonna cost $2 million. It's $2 million a year, which is a 2% rate increase.
Right. That this is expensive and
Okay.
this is a service we're doing.
So combine all of those in the
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, any further input, questions on that? Okay, reluctantly, we move that one forward. Thank you. We are, let's see, item number 7, miscellaneous matters for consideration. We have a water tour next week.
Water tour next week. We're losing a few people.
Who are we losing? I think, Councilmember Bergan and Mr. Jazinski, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Councilmember Lawson.
And Lawson.
And the mayor.
And the mayor.
Oh my gosh.
And most of these we just learned about today.
Wow.
I'm right. We just got
Can
it
I say
yesterday.
Can I say something, please?
Please go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I had unforeseen circumstance with, you may think it's petty, but Nordstrom Rack, I kept bugging them on, are you going to do a special event, a ribbon cutting, whatnot? Of course, they have their grand opening. I just yesterday afternoon got the notice of the VIP event that I'm invited to. And being that I sponsored, the incentive, and that I also for 5 years pushed Southlands to bring this, I feel like I have to go. So I did let one of the council members know that I won't be going. Now, if you guys can convince the rest of them to stay, but I just can't.
Councilmember Bergan, can you hear me?
Yes.
We lost you for a second. I think Greg's computer died but could you repeat, please?
Yeah, I was just saying, unfortunately, with my circumstances, I can't go on the water tour, but maybe you could convince the others to continue, to stay on it.
Yeah, I know you have the unexpected conflicts. Councilman Lawson had an unexpected work conflict. Your colleagues is unexpectedly out, and not sure if Vizier or Councilman Jurinsky. So we'll try to follow up with them.
Yeah, I just think it's a very valuable experience and I love going on it and, I think it's it's great to go on. I'm just sorry I can't.
No, I'm glad you've at least been before. Like for the rest of us, it hasn't happened the whole time we've been on council, so.
I've heard about it for years from Kevin Hogan and those who've been on, so I look forward to it.
Coming part of it the night we get back.
And so, yeah.
We're back.
There we go. Right to the house. All right.
Remember my conflict, I'm coming a little.
All right, well, thank you for supplying the water today. It's delicious. I'm getting a little GAC in it. Okay. The next meeting is, I didn't see my calendar yet, but it will be the second.
September, let's see real quick. I think I have it for September 18th. September 18th, September 20th, sorry.
September 20th, a little bit later that next month.
Yeah, at
Okay.
10:30, our usual time.
Fantastic.
One thing, Françoise, are you still on there?
I am.
Okay, so I think it was last meeting, maybe it was before that. We presented the credit card fee discussion and I got a question about
Debit versus credit. Yeah.
bank cards. Would those be hit with the fee? And I said no. My understanding was that they worked like an ACH payment, and I was wrong. So apparently, if Visa manages the bank card transactions, and if Visa touches the transaction, they'll charge the credit card fee. So it'll be $195 or $795. So bank cards are not safe. We'll have to encourage everybody to switch to direct ACH payments that don't go through a bank card. So
Yeah.
I'm wrong on that.
No, that's okay. And I think you emailed me that and I did, I always pay by phone, that way, but I switched to the bank instead of the checking account, I mean.
Yeah, so very good question. Thank you for that. We'll make sure we get that communication out.
Member Bergan and Coombs, are there any topics you'd like to see in a future meeting come forward regarding water that you think of?
Any innovative technologies out there?
And we are doing the lead service line update next month, as well as the water education and outreach update from Natalie.
Okay. But you'd like to hear some things about what's innovative?
And we are one of the first utilities that I'm aware of that is using AI, artificial intelligence or machine learning in asset management. So I don't know that we're quite, yeah.
We're not going to need Sarah anymore.
That's terrible.
So we can get some innovative things here. Gotta take off.
Do I need to grab my tennis shoes and head out?
All right, and I got lost in the hall.
So you're gonna head over here?
Yes.
Okay, we'll meet you somewhere up front.
Okay.
Yeah. I also brought you away. Oh, so